Oh, we're reversed. Can we reverse
No,
that?
wait a sec. I have to. We have to close that.
There we go.
Open this again. Well, welcome to today's Facebook Live session. Most of you know that Lily was unable to be with us today, and so instead I've asked my husband, Tom Sine, to be a part of this session.
Very glad to be with you.
And for those of you that don't know, Tom is an author, and his latest book is 220s Foresight, came out last year in the middle of the pandemic, which was a bit of a challenge, but still something that maybe another time we will talk about. And Tom is also the co-leader of the Mustard Seed House, this small intentional community that we live in here in Seattle. And this is an old 1910 house divided into 3 apartments. So the first question people always ask is, do we share kitchens? And the answer is no. These are totally separate apartments. So we have our own kitchens, we have our own bathrooms. We live on the main floor. We have probably the biggest area. So we do a lot of the community meetings here. We have 2 bedrooms on this floor. We have a large porch, which is where all my plants have fun. And then we have a prayer tower. Above us is a 2-bedroom apartment, or 2 bedrooms and an office apartment, beautiful apartment with lovely views looking at downtown Seattle and also Green Lake. And then below us is a basement apartment that has had one, our puppy dog always likes to be a part of meetings, and she's reminding us here that she's also a part of our community. So come on, Goldie, come on, up, Goldie. No, she doesn't want to get up at all. She said hello to us, and that's about all. So below us is a 1-bedroom apartment, and we are currently renovating that, and it will become a 2-bedroom apartment. And we share meals together once a week. We do a garden day together about once a month. And the values that we kind of use to undergird our community are spirituality, sustainability, justice, and hospitality. And Tom's getting ready here, but just one other thing I wanted to say before I let him talk about why we live in community is that our last community meeting, we talked about how valuable community has been to all of us here in the Mustard Seed House over the last year or so of the pandemic, and how, the feeling that we've all had that we probably would hardly have survived without community. And I thought, we need to talk about this more broadly. So that's the background for why we're talking about this today. So Tom, why don't you talk about, because you've actually kind of had this dream of community before we were married.
But it's stronger today than when we got married. I just spoke at our Episcopal church, and I told them that we're in a time not only of unbelievable change because of the pandemic, but we are raising up a generation that no longer affiliates with the church. And the only thing pastors and church leaders know is that Gen Y and Gen Z aren't going to attend our churches. Unfortunately, they don't know the good news is that these 2 generations, because they're the first digital generations, are very concerned about issues of climate change, racial justice, economic justice, and they want to use their lives for serious change making. The problem is that that pastors and church leaders don't know is not only they don't know this is the good news generation, they don't realize that they can no longer do the American dream house because it's gotten so expensive in many markets. And they would spend the rest of their life working for a mortgage company. For that reason, we're strong advocates of co-living communities. And what we're trying to do is a modest co-living community. And Christine can tell you the kinds of things that we do together. And I'll get back to you in terms of why this is really important at this time.
Well, part of what I wanted to do particularly was to share a few examples of people that have lived with us over the last 30 years.
Sure.
We had the delight just a couple of months ago of having a family that had lived with us actually for 7 years come back, and their kids had been little when they'd lived with us, and now their eldest daughter is about to go to college, or she probably has started at college now. And it was an absolute overwhelming delight to hear that she wants to develop a ministry of urban agriculture, or a career in urban agriculture.
Yes.
And the thing that planted that in her was the years she spent here working in the garden with us. In fact, she, from the age of 5, was one of my best kind of companions and best helpers in the garden.
Yes.
And I was just absolutely delighted to hear that. In fact, all of the kids are looking at careers that go into some form of agriculture because of the gardening that they did here at the Mustard Seed House. And I can think of others, that have developed careers as a result of the time that they spent with us as well. And Tom, I'm not sure if you've got an example that comes to mind for you.
Well, what comes to mind is the wonderful times we have every Monday night when we have a meal together and we share our spiritual journeys and the things we're struggling with. So we've created a small, mutually supportive community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just had some of our young people leave after 3 years, and they've gone back to California with our blessing. And they did wonderful things as a part of the community. And so we're grateful for community, but we want to try to help older people that have more space in their homes than they're using to consider co-living. And we want to help parents realize that your young people, the under 50, are graduating with much higher school debt and much higher housing costs than prior generations. And if they want to use their lives for serious change making as followers of Jesus, boy, if they can find communities to live in at less expensive costs, then they have time available to be servants of Jesus.
Well, and one of the questions that people say is, well, don't things go wrong sometimes? And yes, occasionally, very occasionally, they do go wrong. But, our experience over the last 30 years since we've been married is that, I would say 95% of the experiences we've had have been positive and just, very, very, very rich kind of experiences, and sometimes very unexpected experiences. I mean, the one that I always delight to tell the story of is these 2 young guys, probably maybe 10 years ago now, that came to our door one day and they said, "Can we sleep in your backyard?" And we're looking at them, we think, well, they don't look like Mormons. They were too scruffily dressed for that. And we said, well, not in our backyard, but at the moment, our basement apartment is empty and you can stay there for a couple of days. They were hoping to get up to Canada to work in a community up there.
That's right.
For a while. And the Canadians, because they were going to get a stipend up there, they weren't allowed to go across the border. So they came back and they'd actually found us on the Intentional Community Directory. And so delightful young guys. They'd been in a community down in San Francisco and came up and so they eventually did get up into Canada for
Yes.
a little while, for a few weeks, but had to come back again. And they actually ended up spending a year with us, sleeping
right.
up our tiny little prayer tower.
We had to go elsewhere for prayer for a year.
But they were delightful, weren't they, love?
Yes, they were.
And
They slept on the floor with sleeping bags and no mattress at all for a year. And they did wonderful things. They refinished the table that we're sitting on. They put new
sitting at, we're not sitting on the table, actually.
No, she's right. She's so observant. I hadn't noticed that. And they did some new plumbing before they left. So it was part of the delight. We have our prayer tower back now. And
we have enduring memories in terms of the things that they did while they were here, that always remind us of them, every time we see them, and just very, very special.
And we've done a lot of hospitality together before COVID, where we've had people coming, large groups. We're having a family come this weekend. Christine's fixing a lovely meal. So we enjoy doing hospitality.
Both the broader community here in the Mustard Seed House and Tom and I as well. Sometimes we have a beautiful patio area outside where we can seat, 25 to 30 people, obviously not at the moment. But, it's just a wonderful place for community gatherings.
And so we encourage you to find the good life of God is not the life just sitting back and enjoying what we accumulate in the nice houses we live in. But think about the call to Jesus, not only to love our God, but to love our neighbors. My concern in terms of forecasting is, while we're continuing in this time of pandemic, there's more unemployment among many population groups. There's a lot of people that are having trouble getting by. And I encourage you, if you've got a bigger home, consider opening it to young people, particularly young people that want to use their lives for change making. Two quick examples. I worked with the Christian Reform folks in Grand Rapids a couple of years ago, and I met two young people that are examples of the good news generation. The first one is a young man who was very concerned in an African-American neighborhood in Grand Rapids at the high rates of unemployment. So he created a whole ministry with two job creation programs. The one was training young men to be involved in construction, because a lot of Black young folks don't go to college, and this pays really good living wage. And another one called Surprising Grinds, a coffee grinding course to help people get ready to work in the restaurants that are now coming back into the fore. There are so many young people that want to start these kinds of social enterprises so that they can make a real difference. If they can reduce their housing costs by living in shared cooperative communities, then they have more time or resources free to be the good news of Jesus in their own communities.
Well, and I think one of the things that we found is that the ripples go out from a community like this. I mean, I've already mentioned, the young people that are looking at careers in urban agriculture and things like that.
That's
I think
right.
of a family we know that are currently in Jordan, where Tom, they lived in our basement before they had kids. For I think at least a year. Lovely couple, and Tom really encouraged him to pursue a doctorate.
Yes, he had only applied at one school, and because I've taught in higher ed all my life with Fuller here in Seattle, I encouraged him to apply at least 3 institutions, which was a novel notion for him, but it paid off.
And mentored him a lot of other ways, I think, as he made those decisions.
Yeah, had the opportunity to help him think more intentionally. So we're available, no expense.
Well, what he's saying is you don't have to be part of this living community for us to feel that we want to, kind of have you as a part of the community that we're involved with.
Yeah, we're here to work with anybody that would like to talk about their future and ways to get to that place where they can be more of the person following Jesus they want to be in times like these.
But we'd love to see more intentional communities develop, not just around the United States, but across the world. Because, I agree with Tom. I think that all of us, and, we know, heck, the cost of housing is going up everywhere. And I think that this is one of the ways that we can see, that we can kind of counteract that and still maintain a way of life, a way of life that we think is far more enriching. We're particularly keen on intergenerational communities.
Yes.
I think people often say to us that we seem a lot younger in the way we think and the way we act sometimes than we are. And I think that part of that is because through community, we have this constant kind of interaction with other
younger people
and with younger people,
and I'm learning so much from the younger people that if I was in an age segregated retirement facility, I just we'd be comparing walkers and bed sores, and that's no way to spend your days. And in Europe,
we're not saying that there isn't a place for retirement centers, because there is definitely, but I think often we don't consider the other options.
Yes, and the other options include co-living communities that were started in Amsterdam several decades ago and have provided
in Denmark.
Well, Denmark and Amsterdam. Okay. And recently in London, they started co-living households, not Christians, but business organizations, because young people that moved to London for work couldn't afford housing or rental properties. And so they essentially rent a bedroom and they share kitchen, recreation spaces at a reduced cost. So co-living is happening all over the planet for a lot of different reasons. But we want to encourage followers of Jesus to move away from a fragmented faith where it is divorced from much of our lives to a whole life faith as followers of Jesus, finding time daily to be present to God and finding time weekly to be present to neighbors.
Well, and I think, reminding ourselves that Christianity is meant to be a community-based faith. It's not an individual kind of faith. We're not meant to practice it as individuals. We're meant to practice it as communities.
In fact, in 220's foresight, I quote, help me with her name, on hospitality.
Christine Pohl.
Beautiful book on hospitality.
Making Room.
And the focus of the book is a discovery for me that the early church didn't meet in church buildings. They moved into the same community across race, nationality, and even socioeconomic, and they became family together in a way that's never been seen on this planet before. So it wasn't just going to church a couple hours on Sunday, it was living in community, in intergenerational, international, intercultural households that demonstrated the way of Jesus as a way of love and compassion for those in that community and in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think that we've really kind of narrowed the focus of Christianity in a lot of situations. And to a certain extent, I think that this last year has made us aware of this. I mean, we all know lonely people, people who have been totally on their own in apartments over this last year, particularly during the lockdown time. And I think that kind of a situation, I mean, I have never felt more grateful for community than I did this last year. I mean, because we were still able to meet. Most of the time we met outside in our patio area, except when it got really, really cold. And then we would meet inside on our floor. We'd wear masks, of course. We'd be socially distanced. And as soon as possible, we all got vaccinated as well. And, but it just made us incredibly grateful for community living and for the impact that it can have on us, and how it can, really protect us from isolation, from that kind of isolation that so many people experienced over this last year. And boy, are we grateful that we didn't have to experience that. And, the people downstairs did some of our shopping, actually our neighbors next door.
Yes.
And in fact, our community living has been an incredible example to our neighbors as well. They really appreciate what we're doing and our emphasis on sustainability and things like that. It's been a huge example to them.
And I'm very appreciative to Christine for this opportunity to meet you and talk to you. And boy, I'd love to do this again on a Zoom call where you could talk back to us and raise questions with more interaction, because I love the interaction. So if that sounds good to you, let us know, because we'd like to talk and learn what you're doing in these difficult days to make a difference and find a way to live more community and more celebratively.
But what questions you do have and comments you have, please put them in the comments on the Facebook Live thread, and then we can answer those. I will put in the book Christine Poole, book Making Room. I'll put a connection to that in the link. And then Tom, other books that you might think are really important, we can put those in the comments as well, and so that people can find them. And I'll put some photos of the Mustard Seed House in that too, so that you can get a feel for what this place looks like. And you can see that we're certainly not restricted in any way in terms of our living conditions. In fact, we live better because of the shared expenses of community for us. That's helped to share some of the expenses of this house.
And we learn so much from the young people. I'm digitally challenged, and they help me make sense of how to use all of these devices. And
actually, I'm the prime one that helps do that for him. So,
but I also have a website that talks about the good news generation. It's called newchangemakers.com.
We'll put that in the comments as well.
Newchangemakers.com.
I suppose I could have been adding these in the chat, but I find it very difficult to write things in the chat at the same time that we're live. So we will put them in the comments afterwards so that you can follow those. And as I said, questions that you have or comments that you want to make, I'm sure that some others have had experiences of community. Unfortunately, people have a tendency to share the bad experiences and not the good experiences. And as I said, here we are. This is a way of life for us. It's not just a short-term experience. And we really do feel that it should be a way of life for everybody. Very important kind of way of life.
As we go into a future that I think is going to be we're going to be experiencing accelerating change of all kinds. Those who have strong community networks are going to have more mutual support, which we'll all need as we rush into the 2020s. It's going to be a very difficult decade, and the more support that we have, the more compassion and care for others we can express.
Well, and we do, I mean, I know we're kind of seem as though we're on a little bit of a different wavelength at times here with this talk, but yeah, I agree with Tom. And not only living together, but helping share things together too. I mean, one of the things that I love that hasn't really been possible over the last year is with the garden. We grow 40 to 50% of our own fruit and vegetable in the garden because that's been a high value for us. And some of you are probably aware, I put up on Facebook the other day that I've made close to 100 quarts of apple cider. I have
3 apple trees.
3 apple trees, dehydrated 4 big bags of those apples. I've made half a dozen apple cakes, 2 apple pies, and I put enough apples in the freezer to make at least 10 more pies or apple cakes or something like that. And then we've given away 100 pounds or more.
Well,
and it was a delightful way to reach out actually to another community group.
But the couples on all 3 floors have been enjoying the apples
as
because
well.
we have a garden day every month, and it's a part of our community life together.
Yes, well, and that was what I was going to say. But we also like to involve people outside the live-in community in that, we had an opportunity with another community to have some of their people come over and pick apples and,
Yes.
Took a lot of apples away. As a result, we've had in the past, we've had days where we've had people processing apples together, which has been really fun. Or even for the garden days, I often posted on Facebook, and in the past we've had people that have joined us on a regular basis and who have learnt to garden. The trouble is, once they learn to garden, they then go and put in their own gardens and they don't have time to come and help us anymore. So we need new people every year to come and help us in the garden.
And we don't have any trouble finding them.
Not usually, but it's just, I love that fact of being able to, not just have this community here, but for all of us to be able to, gift people with resources that they can then take out and take into other places. As I said, the ripples can go out from community in ways that I think are very, very special. I think we're just about at the end of our time here.
Yeah. We just want to wish you all a very blessed Advent as we move into that season of the world year, and Christine's website will have information on that.
Well, and I did want to remind those of you that are looking at this that November 20th, Lily and I will be doing a virtual retreat online, walking in wonder through Advent. And I am really, really looking forward to this because I have had a lot of fun getting ready for it. I know Lily has too. And I do think that this is probably the most important retreat that we have done. So I do hope that you will sign up and be a part of that, either live or looking at the video afterwards, or we will then get it, hopefully within the week, we should have it up as one of our online retreats available as well, so you can use it through Advent too. So please be a part of that. We look forward to seeing you, and thank you for being a part of this. And thank you to Tom. I hope you've learned things from Tom. I always do. Every time I hear him, he says, I've heard this before, and it's true. But I find that I'm constantly learning from him because he's constantly researching and learning new things too.
Well, God bless you all, wherever you are in this troubled world. Our prayers are with you, and we do wish you a blessed Advent and a Christmas filled with joy.
Amen and amen and amen. Thank you, love.